Okay, the last stage after we have completed the synthesizing of evidence and all the other activities for conducting SLR or mapping study. Now the last part is to report the review. Okay, we have to actually find means and ways. How can we disseminate the findings that we obtain from the review or from the SLR or mapping study. So results from the SLR can be reported to different audiences. Okay, can be for practitioners, for academics or researchers, for students. Okay, for practitioners, normally we can send to practitioner-oriented journals and magazines, summary leaflets, posters, or web pages. Okay, venues that normally the industry practitioners will use. For academics, okay, for students, for researchers, for lecturers, this one we can send to normally academic conferences, okay, or journal. So for academics, we need to provide detailed reporting, okay, so to enable this group of people to assess and evaluate the quality of SLR. So the main thing about reporting the mapping study or the review is to share the findings, is to disseminate the knowledge that we found, because the evidence that we obtain from the mapping study or the SLR is something that could be useful, can be useful, and they can learn something from the findings. So the reporting ideally will include changes to the study protocol, complete list of included and excluded primary studies, data on classification if we perform the mapping study, and the raw data derived from each studies. So basically, it also depends on the venue where we send. If let's say we send to journals, normally it requires a lot more detail. But if you send to the paper to conferences, normally the length of the papers is just between 6 to 10 pages. So between 6 to 10 pages, we do not have much space to actually, put everything. Okay. So, but the list of studies and the protocol we use, normally we can add as an appendix in the paper. So reporting SLR results or mapping study results to journals, what do we need to report? There are actually some guidelines, not really format, but I would say typical structure. Okay, typical structure of how do we write the results. So what to report? Firstly is that we need to highlight the objective. Why we are doing that mapping study, why we are doing that SLR, what we wanted to investigate, what do we want to achieve. Okay, and then we can provide brief description about the method that we use. If you conducted SLR, then we have to explain the method. Or if you conducted a mapping study, then explain, and only brief. Brief means you do not need to spend so much explanation about the methodology, but enough to mention them what are the steps taken. And then present the results. Okay, how do we get the results? So this result basically from the synthesizing of evidence part. So when you synthesize, remember, when you synthesize the mapping study or SLR, you can have the evidence in the form of numerical synthesis or descriptive synthesis. Okay, and also interpretation. So what this interpretation means? So normally when we write the results, we are telling people what we found. Okay, but the interpretation is something else. This is what we discuss. Interpretation is something that give meaning to the findings. Okay, let's say for example we found that majority of the studies about pair programming have been conducted in academic. So basically you can highlight that compared to industry consumption, the practice is much more prevalent or much more being used, yeah, in academic example. So interpretation can be any of our, I would say, thinking, yeah, our belief based on the results. Okay, it can be belief, it can be something that we thought. Okay, we thought, and of course, it is good that if we can um, include references to support our arguments. Okay, so how do we report? How to report? Any standard reporting available? As I said, there is no specific template. But if we normally publish to certain journals or articles, normally they have their own template. And we can always refer to existing published SLRs or existing published mapping study, which I will show you example. And where to submit? Well, as I said, depending on the venue, okay, and the detaility of the paper, we can submit it to conferences or journals. So journals normally takes a lot more time. If you send to conferences, normally it takes lesser time, because conferences normally they will give fast feedback as compared to journal. Journal can take up to 6 months sometimes for you to just to receive feedback. And then when you receive feedback, sometimes it depends on the results. Sometimes they will just reject it. Sometimes they will accept but with major modification, or sometimes they will accept with minor modification. So it really depends on the reviewer who read the paper. Okay, so general reporting structure for mapping study or SLR. So firstly, you need to have the abstract. Okay, so this one is just around 150 words, describing what the study is about. Okay, the method that we use, the main results, and the main conclusion. And then we have introduction, and then we have the main body, and then the conclusion. So this is a typical structure. So the introduction must tell a reader about the background about the study. So we need to provide some introduction about the topic that we are investigating. And then reason why the SLR or this question or the mapping study that you do is important. Okay, what is the rationale? What is the motivation? Why do we want to know? Why do we want to review this topic? And then we can state the objectives. Okay, state the objectives or the aim of the mapping study or SLR, and describe contribution to knowledge and practice. So in terms of the main body, after the introduction, normally followed by related work. So related work, you can explain about what are the existing works, yeah, that have been done. So basically, maybe you can include some review paper that has been published, or some maybe other SLR or mapping study that people have done in that particular area, or any interesting related work. When we say related work, you are highlighting other studies that is related to your work. Okay, and then the review method, as I said just now, briefly describe the steps taken to conduct the review. So this is basically just a brief explanation about the steps to conduct the review. Yeah, and then the major part is the results. This is the major part. Okay, so this is where normally we report the number of studies that we have screened or filtered, and then how many that we have accepted or included for the SLR or mapping study, and then the results from the synthesis of evidence. And finally, discussion. So discussion should not repeat the results, because the results are just telling what the results are. But in the discussion, you are summarizing the findings and provide further interpretation in terms of the strength of evidence, in terms of the implications and the limitations. Finally, in the conclusions, we can provide summary of the results and then reinstate the overall contribution of the work and our potential future work. Okay, I'll show you some example. Let me find. Okay, this is one paper. This is a mapping study. Okay, this is a 9 pages paper, and it is a conference paper. It was submitted to this Agile conference and accepted in that conference. So when you submit a paper to a conference, as the author, you're going to attend the conference as a presenter. Okay, this is interesting where you can find other experts, other scientists, who are working in the similar area as you. So this paper title is Agile Testing, Past, Present and Future, charting a systematic map of testing in Agile software development. And these are the list of authors from Calgary, University of Calgary in Canada. So you see, they write the abstract first. Okay, so abstract is just a summary, a short summary of what the paper is about, right? So they are concerned about testing, agile testing. So the abstract is telling what testing is, okay, and then a little bit of justification, okay, why they do this topic. Testing has been a cornerstone of agile, However, the terminology used to describe the field as well as the evidence in the existing literature is largely inconsistent. This is the issue. The terminology used to describe the field is inconsistent. So, to provide a better structure of our understanding of the field and to guide future work, we conducted a systematic mapping of agile testing. So, they are doing a mapping study. So, they have investigated 5 research questions. Which authors are most active? They wanted to know who's the most active. And then what is agile testing used for? What types of papers tend to be published? How do practitioners and academics contribute? What tools are used? Of particular interest is our investigation into the source of these publications, which indicate that academics and practitioners focus on different types of publications, and stubbornly that the number of practitioners' papers in the sources was research is strongly down since 2010. Strongly down means there is lack of interest from the practitioners on the topic of agile testing. Maybe not so much practitioners actually write and publish, So because normally the job of writing, publish is normally of academics or researcher or scientists. Okay, and then in the introduction, okay, this is where you provide the background. Okay, you provide the background, what is the study that you are doing, and it's about testing, and then you explain, we choose mapping study, given that meta-analysis of agile testing found that evidence for the effectiveness of this practice is conflicting and varies widely. See, they provide the setting, the setting of the paper, and then the goal. They mention what is the goal of the paper, to structure the body of literature in agile testing practices in order to better inform future work in this field. Okay, so you provide the setting when introduction. When you write, the introduction does not need to be too long. Okay, this is okay for 2 column. Okay, and then background. So this is you can provide a more detailed background about what the topic is. Okay, and also some related work. Alright, you can include some related work. For example, in the meta-analysis by Schul, So they cited some other works. Okay, as you see, they cited some other works. You see, this is important when you write a background or related work section. And then methodology. So under methodology, this is where you describe what are the method that you have used. Okay, so for example, this one they are doing matrix mapping study, so they are using the guidelines by Peterson. So they refer to Peterson's guideline, and then they define the research question. See, okay, these are the research question, and then how they do the search. Okay, what databases they use. See, they use also Scopus and IEEE Explore. Explaining and then this is the process of filtering. Okay, the first pass, and then screening the papers. Okay, and they perform the curating of abstracts because they do a mapping study. So because they need to find out what kind of classification they need to use, and then present the results. Okay, so if you notice, the results come in the form of graph. Yeah, it can be in the graph how many. These are the type of testing that have been done. Number of publications by year, you see, and then for more diagrams. So I will share with you this paper. Okay, all right, and the result. This is a bubble plot. So you can use various ways to present the results. Okay. And finally, the conclusions.